I'm Margaret.
And I'm Kapil.
So we met in 1973 and we ended up in a course together, and the topic was about better communication. So we were asked to bring something with us to the class. In this case, it was, believe it or not, a grapefruit. You were to bring a grapefruit to the class, and you were to, in the end, you were to go up to the person in the class and give it to the person that you would most like to get to know better. So I had already decided that I was going to give my grapefruit to Kapil. And so I went over to him and gave him my grapefruit. I think he had given his to an older gentleman that was in the class, but anyways, and Kapil.
So, I was very appreciative and thankful to Margaret for doing that. And I thought maybe there's a possibility that, we could start a friendship. We don't go as far as saying a relationship, that's too premature and early. So after that, maybe in the next week or two, I called Margaret and asked her out for a date.
And so he called me up. He asked me, I think, to go to the movies. I said, no, I'd like to go to dinner at the beach. So he picked me up and we drove over to Malibu. There was a restaurant there. And
a restaurant called Chart House.
The Chart House in Malibu, which is now something else. Right on the water. And it's funny, Kapil drove a car in those days that had bucket seats, but he had borrowed his roommate's car, which had a bench seat, you call it, so you could sit closer. And of course, I didn't do that immediately, but anyways, and so then we headed out for the date. And I remember I had a new outfit, which I have kept, by the way. I have the jacket and the blouse from that. I've kept to this day. And so anyways, we had a lovely date, and from there we just started to date.
So how long did we date before we moved up, Margaret?
It was June or July anyways, Kapil got a job. He was recruited to go up to Santa Clara to work as a software engineer. He went up there, and so then began our long distance romance. And so we did not live in the same area geographically again until we married in 1980. So we had a 7-year period where we did not live in the same geography at all. It was
we did it for about a year?
Yeah, a little over a year.
Before we moved up.
What were your first impressions of each other?
Well, first of all, I thought he was nice looking, and also I thought he just looked interesting. He just looked, and he was so different, just the fact that he was Indian and he had said some interesting things in the class. And so he was, quite exotic, I thought, and interesting, and he just seemed to be very nice and quiet, and anyways. Great.
From my perspective, she was very good looking. She was very intelligent and much different than a lot of the girls that I didn't have any girlfriend before that. And she had much ambitions, what she wanted to do, to be a lawyer. And she kept on that track. So I think that was pretty different than some other girls who may have an objective of, I need to get married quickly. That worked in our favor. So we didn't have to make very quick decisions or get into arguments and so on, when are we going to do this and so on. So I think the best thing that happened to us was time. Time really played in our favor. It took us 6-7 years. We got to know each other pretty well by then, and the decisions came on automatically. We knew a lot about, how to get along better. There are always challenges and issues, but then how you overcome that. Okay, and so that was, I think, unique and different. I haven't come across maybe 1 or 2 other people that have had a long-term friendship, relationship, and which later led to getting married. But that was our journey.
Well, and I don't think we were ever just friends, by the way. I think anyways, it was a real romance there.
And how did you evaluate your compatibility in the beginning?
Let me answer that. It's not mathematical, okay? So I think a lot of people these days that you read about it, do an analysis after your first date. What was good, what was wrong. I don't think we ever did that. And I think the answer to that is that we were together for a long period of time, in a relationship. And that just speaks volumes. So I think over a period of time, we were pretty sure that there was compatibility, okay, because we stayed together that long. And that would be the way I would describe it. And it wasn't, looking at the pluses and the minuses and, what column is there, and it's not mathematical.
So you did not have a checklist?
No, No, I was just happy to be dating, have a nice person and everything. So no, yeah.
So the other thing that was important to me, at least, and also to Margaret, is how we got along with the families. Since I would go visit her every 2-3 weeks and so on, so I got to know the family very well. Her mother and dad, and they treated me very well. I don't think there was ever a situation like, you're from India, our daughter is American, how are you going to get along? Never. No questions about that. And they fully embraced me. And I think, although my parents were in India, but Margaret met them before we had gotten married, she had a similar welcoming reaction
Yes.
to them.
Yeah.
So I think that was important. A lot of times in a relationship, it's just two people and the families either don't want to get involved, they don't support you and things like that. Art was not that case. Margaret was in Southern California, I was up in Northern California. She came up to meet my parents. Now you can tell what happened.
Well, I was just beyond nervous, so they were staying with him. And then I remember he picked me up from the airport, and I needed a tranquilizer. But anyways, and so then we got to the house, and my mother-in-law rushed out to meet me and embrace me. And his father, of course, he wasn't an embracer, but he was very kind. And I just felt like I weighed 100 pounds less in that moment. I was such a relief. And so we met, and of course, and talked and spent that day together. His mother was a renowned matchmaker. She had many, many matches to her credit. And so here she had this son in America who was successful, and they were so proud of him and everything. And I think she was waiting for that one last match. But he had previewed the fact that he didn't want to meet any girls. But anyways, they were quite lovely, I must say. They were just wonderful. There began a relationship with the most wonderful mother-in-law that anyone could ever ask for. I have to say, it was my privilege to be her daughter-in-law. She was a beautiful, wonderful woman, a kindest woman, and really all of Kapil's family embraced me right from the beginning. I've been so blessed with his family to have them as in-laws.
Since you mentioned you've been together for 44 years, how have you kept the spark alive?
Did you want to answer that first?
I think spark is, we're there for each other, and we do things together. We celebrate each other. Birthdays are important to Margaret. Okay, her jewelry is important to Margaret. Anniversaries, travel, and so all those things throughout the year. There's something happening, and that's one way of showing you love her, that she means something to you, and so that's what keeps it alive.
I think that spark is also, for me, it's also just this continued appreciation of this life we've had together. If someone had showed me my life, when I first met him, that what my future life would be, I would have thought, no, it's not possible, So anyways, that's been good. So it's, again, I think it's just a shared appreciation. I don't think we have ever been the kind of couple where you would see us, even when we were first dating or whatever, at a party or something, where we would be lots of public displays of affection. Kapil is a very reserved person, and I, tend to be shy in those quarters too. But in case when people watch this and they say, I wonder why those two weren't holding hands, it's because, anyways.
So the good part was we both supported each other. She knew my co-workers and would participate in any events that we had, and there was plenty of travel involved, at least for me, worldwide, international work and so on. And I think without her support, I wouldn't have been able to do that. Okay, so those were the shared values. And then the second phase was our children. I think it takes a lot of work, and Margaret did a lot of the heavy lifting there.
You've celebrated some 44 anniversaries together. Do you feel there's a pressure to outdo the last one?
Oh yes, there is. In terms of, what else can I get her? I think it's all worth it.
It's always hard for me to try to think of, our daughters are always asking me, what are you getting Dad for our anniversary? Because really the guy has a short list, let's put it that way. So, anyways, but that's not my style.
Do you have a favorite memory with each other, one that particularly stands out?
So we were married in a Catholic ceremony in Pasadena. We had a small Indian wedding, but then his parents had a very lavish, huge reception. Then all I did was say namaste, and very nice to meet you for, maybe 600 times. It was a huge reception. We had at his parents', there was a Sangeet, and I had no idea what a Sangeet was. Nobody really explained it to me. And so I got there and, it was at his parents' home, and I came out and, and then these women were singing, but of course in a language I didn't understand, and I didn't really even understand that it was really directed to me as a bride, and in those days there were two beverages available to women at a party, which was like a lemon lime, limca they called it, this lemon lime soda, or this, I think it was called thumbs up cola, something like that. And this, not that this wasn't true in America, but the party divided between the women, and then the men were in another room. And of course there they were passed, scotch and, whatever. But Kapil managed to, because I was so nervous, he managed to sneak in a little bit of alcoholic beverage into my thumbs up cola. So after a while, I was okay. I look back and treasure a lot of that.
We celebrated successes along the way, professional successes, and also the birth of our two daughters. I think those were the landmarks, I would say.
What's your favorite or the most cherished quality about each other?
Kapil is such a very humble individual. First of all, he'll never ask you, what you do and how much money you make or anything like that. Despite the fact that he's been incredibly successful, when he's asked, what do you do? I'm an engineer. And of course he was so much more than that. And so I love that quality about him, that he's so humble and understated and far more interested in other people and about them than necessarily telling them much about himself. I think the other thing is that I've been so fortunate. I just feel I got the best man in the entire world. I'm so incredibly lucky with that he has been a wonderful both husband and father to our daughter, and now grandfather. He's very close to our daughters, and we do feel very blessed and thank God all the time for the fact that our daughters, we have wonderful son-in-laws who we consider really our sons, even though we never had any. And now we have been blessed with 3 grandsons, which is a very new world for us since we had daughters. The things that I love about him so much, and that he is very, very kind and attentive and does like to surprise me with a few things.
And as far as Margaret is concerned, I think, she's very understanding and accommodating. But if you consider that, before I entered her world, she knew very little about the Indian culture, Indian traditions, the Indian food, and all that. And, she's been very open about that. Whereas I didn't have to change much. I was already living here in America. I did too, but not to the extent that she did. And I think a lot of my Indian friends and so on, she's just as comfortable with them, and they're as comfortable with her, and so on. So I think that has made a big difference. I don't think they felt like, she's a foreigner or she doesn't fit well within us. So I think very fortunate about that. And I think that, that makes life easier for me.
You mentioned that you still have the dress that you wore on the first date. Do you remember what she was wearing?
No, I don't.
I do. He was wearing
I remember a blue sweater?
Yes, he was wearing a blue V-neck sweater and a shirt, and of course trousers, so he was greeted at the front door by my parents, and my mother was she had a small dachshund dog at the time, and he was out on the front porch, and I introduced him to my parents, and his roommate's car was down there at the end of the driveway, and off we went. But anyways, I do remember that very well. And then it was a very nice sweater, which I think he then shrunk in the wash or something. So it's not preserved. But
what color are her eyes?
I think they're green.
I think they're blue.
They're more than that. No,
Okay,
they're not.
blue-green.
They're more green than blue.
We spend a lot of time gazing into one another's eyes, as you might imagine.
One thing that she always has in her bag.
Diamonds.
Well, not in my purse, but anyways, whatever.
Well, you can see her right now.
Okay, never mind. You're just going to have every pickpocket in California out for me in about when we return home. Find that Margaret Nanda somewhere.
And what were you wearing?
So I was wearing some white pants and a floral blouse, a printed blouse, and a jacket over it.
Who said, I love you first?
Oh, I think I said it first.
Probably.
Yes.